This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we have a GE electric dryer that doesn't have any heat. So I'm pulling the plug out slightly and I'm going to check for voltage on the brass prongs that are connected to the outlet to see if I get 220 volts. So I actually get 240, so we got plenty of electricity coming in. So we know that it's not that. We know the breakers haven't tripped because we got power coming in. So I'm going to pull the plug out. And I'm going to put a paint scraper here about 2 inches in on each side and pop it with my heel of hand, and that allows me to lift up the top. And I'm going to climb up on a stool and take my continuity tester and test this little high limit fuse here that's in the back upper right hand corner. It shows that it does have continuity, so that high limit didn't trip. If that did trip, you could just replace it. So I think it might be the element. I'm going to pull these connectors apart, and then I'll remove the zip tie. Just going to cut it off. And then I have to take out a couple of Phillips head screws, and I can remove the top panel. I'm going to remove this little spacer thing. It's got a little Phillips head screw holding it in. Get that out of the way. And then a Phillips head screw here. It's about maybe 6 inches down. And then there's one on the other side too. Once those are off, you can easily pry the front panel back. And once it's removed, you can remove the tumbler and the belt and the tumbler, and then you can get in and do the repair of the heating element. So pulling it back, and there's a couple of little clips that are holding it. That clip just let go. And then I'm going to lift it up off of its bottom clips. Get that panel out of the way. And then to get the tumbler out, all I got to do is remove the belt. So I loosen the belt by taking it off the either wheel. I lifted up the back of the tumbler by about 2 inches to get the rear bearing to come out of its cup that it's holding. And I pulled out the whole tumbler so I can get a good view of the spring heating element in the back. And it looked like that heating element was broken, so I'm going to remove it. I took off the spade connectors that were bringing power, and then what I'll do is I'm going to bend the terminal here back and forth so it gets metal fatigue, and then the end of it would just fall off, and that's going to allow me to pull that terminal out of its housing. So I'm just grabbing it with my needle nose pliers. I'm bending it up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down until the metal fatigue breaks the metal, and then I can just pull it out. Sometimes these elements just get hot, cold so many times that finally the wire breaks, the spring breaks. I just got that one out. I broke that metal piece off. Here comes the next one. You can also buy the entire heating element, which is the spring and also this back metal bracket, but it's pretty expensive. If you just buy the spring by itself, it's pretty cheap. So I'm pulling it off of these porcelain spacers. The idea of the spacer is to make sure that the spring, the coil, is held away from the metal. If that spring ever touched the metal, it would cause a short circuit, it would pop your breakers, and it might even break or melt the spring or the element. So you have to make sure that the spacers are being used to keep that spring away from connecting to any metal. So you're just basically pulling it off of these spacers all the way around. That's where it broke previously, right there. These probably go a good 10 years before they break. Pretty good. And these spring kits are fairly cheap. You can get these on the internet. So now we got the old spring off, and we're going to open up the package. Here's the new one, and all you got to do here is just push these terminals in through the hole. It's one for each terminal, two holes there, and then I'm going to stretch this spring around the outside of these porcelain spacers just to get a feel for the shape. It's going to make a nice round shape. Then I'll push these down onto the porcelain spacers until they click into position. And again, I'm just being careful that as I do this, there's no point where this spring ever touches that back metal plate, because that would cause a short circuit. So I'm just going all the way around. Yeah, I think these springs are only like 20 or 30 bucks, but if you buy the whole heating assembly, it's about 230 bucks. So you can save almost $200 by just doing it this way. So I'm just carefully getting it on each one of these porcelain spacers. Just take your time, just trying to keep a nice even spacing between each one. Making sure that they're all locked in against the porcelain spacer and that none are loose. I'm going to do these ones on the bottom now. There's certainly other things that can cause a no heat problem, like that high limit that we looked at earlier, or a breaker that's tripped. But if those don't check out, then it's probably this element has broken. So I got them all into position. Just going to double check it before I do the reassembly. Pretty evenly spaced, making sure there's no point where it makes contact with the metal. Okay, looks good. Here's the part number for this Frigidaire part. It's funny, if you buy the GE part, it's very expensive. If you buy the Frigidaire part, which is the same part, it's really cheap. And now I'm bending with my needle nose pliers the terminals so that they stay in position, and I'm putting the power wires back on. I'm putting the tumbler back into position. I'm going to lift it up in the back so that it goes up over the little plastic cup and then sits down into that cup. There we go. And then to confirm it's in there, I'm going to grab the tumbler and just gently turn it all the way around, making sure it's spinning on the little plastic cup. Looks good. I got the belt back far on the tumbler. It kind of leaves a image of where the belt goes, and then I put the belt back over the idler wheel, back over the motor pulley. I got the front panel back on, setting it down on the bottom clips, and then as I get it in closer, I'm going to push this wire harness in. I'm going to lift up on the tumbler so that it can sit down on the front bearing, on the felt front bearing that's connected to the front panel. I'm going to push in, make sure it's locked into position. I'll turn it by hand, confirming that it's spinning freely on the front bearing. And then I'm going to climb up there and put those 2 Phillips head screws back in. That holds on the front panel. So if you have a step stool, you can get up high enough to do all this stuff. That screw on. There's one here on the right side. Got that one on. I'm going to reconnect these modular power connectors. It brings power to the timer. It can only go on one way, so you keep trying until it slips on and clicks into place. There we go. We'll do the smaller connector and put the top back down. We got it. And this is just cleaning the vent tube with a cleaning brush, making sure that there's no obstruction. And this dryer did really good. It went back to heating really well, and it was just because the heating element had broken over time. Pretty easy to fix, pretty easy to replace, pretty cheap. So I hope that's helpful to you and gets your dryer going again real soon. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe when you get a chance.